Stories after breakfast with my brother. That's what we're going to call it. Well, hello, James. Nice you could to join. Breakfast with my after breakfast with my brother. That's what we're calling this. I will be reading. What do you call it? A time traveler's beginning. What is it? A beginner's guide to time travel. That's the word. Oh, look, I have two people now. Oh my goodness, I've got more people than I have when I was reading it at night, and that's three. Pretty pathetic, isn't it? Oh well. I don't have a lot, do I? Well. So I just had breakfast with my brother, which is always fun because we're both a little twisted. And so then being good Canadian boys that we are, he doesn't talk about hockey because he doesn't watch it. Loser that he is. So we talk about documentaries that he's been watching because he watches documentaries and shit like that. What's he watching now? He's watching the Tom Hanks thing about the Second World War or whatever. And yeah, well, he says, well, it's a funny thing. They keep talking about stuff and they don't really include the rest of the world when it comes to the war. Okay, he says, Guadalcanal. Because yeah, they make it sound like just the Americans fought there. Oh, I need to put my microphone here, don't I? Sorry, can you hear me now? Send me a heart. Yeah, Guadalcanal. Like he says, the Australians were there. You'd never know that. And that's true. Yeah. So, anyways, I got this all wrapped up. There you go. I'm going to read to you from this. I printed it up so that way, I don't know, whatever, right? I don't know where I'm going to put it. Yeah. I'm not going to try and go and do a rehash of the story because I forget. You know how long it took me to realize where I was? Because I don't mark things down. I'm going to actually mark things down now. This is chapter, what the hell? I don't even have that anymore. Chapter, that's not it. There we go. Chapter, what the, chapter 11. Okay, chapter 11. I'm reading chapter 11 and 12. Yes. And I have over here, I have my book trilogy. Trilogy is my novellas. I've been selling them. Not. I've sold one. I have one published. I've made a revenue total of $5.97. Okay. One book I've sold. Apparently, and nobody wants it. But I'm starting a new marketing thing. Now, in order, I don't know anything about marketing. I haven't got a clue. I don't know how it works. I don't do that kind of stuff because, I was a mill worker. I mean, I didn't get a computer until I was 40 some odd years old. Yeah, so I know nothing about marketing and all of that shit like that. So I used ChatGPT, and I don't even know how to use that, right? So I say to ChatGPT, come up with a marketing plan where I can market shit. So then it sends me this stuff, and I've got like pages of it, and I go, oh, cool, a 30-day Substack and social media conversion plan. I was like, okay. So it gives me week 1 identity establishment. I have to establish my identity. You guys know me? And then I have Substack 3 posts. The world is already written before we arrive. Post-war Italy was not peaceful. It was quietly broken. I don't know any about this shit. Why I write in fragments of memory. Well, apparently. Maybe. Facebook, daily excerpt posts. Minimal captions. Reddit. It's like I was on Reddit once or twice. I don't understand it, so I don't go on there very much. Discussion posts only. LinkedIn. I don't even have a job. Why do I need LinkedIn? Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, so I'm thinking if I put this up. Oh, I dropped my microphone. If I put this up, and actually work on it, I will uh I will come up with something, and people will look and go, "Oh, well, maybe I'll look into it. Maybe not. Maybe." So, that being that being trilogy 1, The Bridges of Rome. Yeah. Um, that's for sale on my what do you call it? My, Substack. You can get that word called link. Yeah, I'm not very good at this stuff. Every once in a while I swear too, but I try not to because I don't want to offend people. In real life, that being like in my normal life, I don't really give a shit. I'm not politically correct. In fact, I had to go and see a specialist the last week because, well, when you get to be a certain age, you have to do shit to take care of yourself, and so I try to do that. So I go and see this guy, and he says to me, "You're not working?" I go, "No, no, I'm retired, or as my wife says, retarded." He's like, "Whoa, you went there, did you?" I said, "What?" Like he said, like, "You're not politically correct, eh?" I go, "Oh no, not in the least," because I worked in a sawmill. That's we talk like that all the time. It's just a way, you know. I mean, like, what is it? My name. Okay, in Canada, up here, we have a product. It's an ointment for when you have sore muscles and you've overexerted yourself. You put this ointment on, and it is called Ben Gay. So I went to a work. I was 19, and my name is Ben. My very first day, I was called Ben Gay. And for 45 years, I was considered to be gay because that was my name, Ben Gay. They wrote it on walls. Ben is gay. They wrote all sorts of stuff. I had nicknamed Long Leaping. Oh, when I worked on the boom, a Long Leaping Homosexual was one of them. Yeah, constantly. And, it didn't bother me. Why would it? Like, but apparently those are not, nice things to say. So when I started working, in fact, I just had my anniversary seniority date. I told the wife, I go, wow, today's my seniority date. She says, what are you talking about? That was on Sunday. I said, yeah, I started working June 7th, 1977. It was really funny because our place, your seniority, when you signed the contract, it was June the 15th. So I started June the 7th. And so then every couple of years or whatever, you get more holidays. And so then you go up a percentage on your holiday pay and the holiday pay for the year or whatever from June to June. So then you would get a 2% raise. And so then I only got, what is it, a week's worth at 2%. So one year I see the payroll girl and she's outside having a smoke. And so then I sit down beside her and said, hey, man, like I've got my seniority date coming up. Um, how much am I going to make this year? Can I buy a case of beer with it? And she said, oh, you can buy a case of beer and then some. I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, they've changed the day in the payroll. So instead of it being June the 15th, it was May the 31st. And I was like, what? How cool is that? So then she said, yeah, you can get 2 cases of beer. It's like $30. I was like, oh, cool. I like that. Not that I got 2 cases of beer. I think I got probably got a bottle of rum. Who knows? Anyways, I'm babbling and babbling and babbling, and I'm going to. Oh, I just screwed everything up here. I have 24 pages, spaced it out a little bit, so it's easier reading. So I have 24 pages, chapters, I forgot already, 11 and 12. Okay, so this is a beginner's guide to time travel. Oh yeah, I told you I wasn't going to do a recap, and like as you recall in last week's episode, they escaped from these scavenger people who live underground in the old tunneling systems that are the sewers and things like that. And they escaped from them and made their way into the hills, and they found rocky cliffs and shit like that. So here we go. We found a perch high in the rocks with a view of the valley below. Seen from above, I could see the zigzag tracings of the tunnels through the growing shadows of the trees. It was like looking at the veins of a man's arm, except they were light traceries of dirt lost in a field of fresh grass. There were holes spaced across the vast expanse of fields, each with a small, worn and weary hummock encasing it. And I could see the beach where we'd set up our camp. The bladders I'd used to make the gunnels of the raft were piled against the rocks. I wondered how long it'd take before some curious predator thought it was prey of some sort and bit into them. We're going to have to make a camp, I said. I need to get our things. You can't seriously think about going back there, she said. She was holding her arms over her breasts, covering them for whatever strange reason she had. Her clothing was torn and tattered, leaving her exposed. I told her I was going to have to look at her wounds for any possible infections she might unknowingly have. At first, she agreed. She was reluctant, but at least she'd agreed. As I looked down at her, she immediately covered her breasts again, covering a great many of the wounds that lined her rib cage. What, you don't want me to look at your cuts? I asked. Jeline was like that. She was always falling and cutting herself. If there's dirt in there, it'll have to be scraped out one way or the other. I won't be able to help you once it gets dark. I don't want you looking at my breasts, she replied. Why would I look at your breasts? They're not scratched up. Your ribs, though, I said, shaking my head. We're going to have to walk overland. The cuts will get infected if I don't clean them properly. And then what use will you be to me? I'd have to stop. At this point, I'd have to say we're a day behind. How much time do you think we'll lose if your wounds become infected? Days. I don't want you looking at me like that. Like what? Like the way you're looking at me now. She was exasperating. And if you die because of your wounds, I won't die. I promise. You'll die needlessly if you do. There are plants out there and water. I can easily make a poultice to remedy whatever infections you may have. There's no infection now, I said. There's no infection now. Can't you feel the scratches on your back? They run around to your rib cage. What scratches? I placed my finger on a scratch and followed the bloody line under what remained of her clothes, all the way to her rib cage. I pressed hard, not hard enough to make her cry out in pain, but hard enough so that it was uncomfortable. She didn't move. You have 3 others that long, all one above the other, as if the creature ripped at your clothes from behind. That happened when the first one grabbed me. I remember that. At least let me get some water and wash the dirt out of it while we still have light. If I wait until morning, it'll seal up and I'll be forced to break the scab. I have to dig out the dirt, and I don't think I have to tell you how much it'll hurt if we don't do it now. Where are you going to get the water from? She said, and almost in the same breath added, You can't expect to go down to the river. Those things will be waiting for you. You need not worry about me, I said. I'm not. It's just that if you die, what do you think's going to happen to me? I promise you, I won't die, I said, picking up my bow. I made my way down to the riverside without making a sound. Coming back would be different, I knew, but I'd take care of that when the time came. I made my way down the rocks, looking across the open fields. The trees were gently folding into themselves and looking so deceptively peaceful, and all the while I was telling myself we needed the things I left behind. I spent all morning cutting out the bottom of the raft as well as the tusker bladders. I found one bladder that was the size of a melon. I took the dagger out of its sheath and carefully punctured a hole into the bladder. It was difficult because I'd coated the bladders in pitch, but I was finally rewarded with the slow hiss of escaping air. I walked to the river, squeezing the rest of the air out of the bladder and holding it underwater so that I could fill it. I watched the water's surface in case there might be something lurking underneath. I've seen unsuspecting deer and elk taken into the water by lurking crocs hiding in the mud. I looked up at the overhanging branches, knowing that's where the big snakes hunted, dropping on their prey and squeezing the life of them. The world's a hard place. I noticed thin vines among the branches, cut several dozen lengths, braiding them together. When I finished, I had 7 cords of vine I tied together at one end. I laid the braids out, placing the bladder on top, then pulling up the 7 braids and loosely tying a strand around the top to hold the vines in place. I wove 3 vines horizontally through the small cage, one at the bottom, one in the center, the last near the top. Satisfied, I picked it up. The bladder settled into place, hanging from my belt. I was able to cut a small piece of pithy reed, using it for a stopper. I cut a second handful of reeds, thinking I might be able to use them for cleaning the woman's wounds. Then I looked under the several branches, where I found 3 different mushrooms I knew I could use to make a poultice. There was also a selection of herbs. One had to be wary of rattlers, which at least let you know where they are. A viper is a silent killer. Finally, I had everything I needed and looked at both the clearing and the rocks on the other side. It'd be a long trek back, being weighed down with everything I had. I picked up the tusker hide, rolling it up and tying it tight with my rope. I made loops so that I could slip my arms through and carry it properly. I knew my feet would echo in the tunnels underneath, and it'd take no time for them to track me. But I thought I might avoid the tunnels if I step over them and run across the solid ground. The sound would still be there, but it would be muffled. It would take time for them to figure out where the steps were coming from, and that was time I could use to my advantage. I looked at the limited supplies we had and picked up the furs I'd worn when we were in the Vandals. I took a second tusker bladder, poking my dagger into it and again, squeezing out as much of the air as I could. I'd make a second water carrier tomorrow. I pushed the pithy centers I had into the empty bladder, leaving a piece of each hanging out before climbing on top of the rocks we'd made our camp at and searching the clearing in front of me. I was looking for any slight discolorations that told me where the tunnels were. They weren't difficult to find. I was able to map out the path I was going to use, hoping there were no traps laid out. I thought that because that's exactly what I would have done. I looked at the rocks around me and then smiled. I reached for a thin tendril of vine in the tree above and then took an arrow from my quiver. I looked for the longest, flattest rock I could, and using the vine, quickly tied one of the rocks to the shaft of an arrow. I picked up 4 more rocks and carried them. It doesn't have to go far, I told myself. I just need to distract them. I pointed the arrow up at an angle, pulling the string back, then adjusted the rock on the arrow before I let it fly. At the same time, I took to the clearing as fast as I was able, leaping over the tunnels as best I could. I stumbled, then I saw the ground opening up to my left. I paused long enough to hurl another rock as far as I could and started running again. I made it to the rocks as a large section of the tunnel fell in and over the sod. I pointed my crossbow at the one in front, putting a bolt on the rail and releasing it. The bolt almost went right through the creature's neck, and I could see the creature clutching at its throat. I made my way into the rocks, leaping from ledge to ledge in an effort to climb higher. I went behind a rock blind, using it to double back on my position, and then climbed up and out of sight where the woman was laying against the rocks. As good as a battle in the morning to get the blood flowing, she asked, and I smiled. It does have its moments, I said. Later, I lay the furs out on the rocks and told her to roll onto them on her stomach. I picked at the ripped fabric embedded in the scratches,
Some of the fabric had dried into the blood and scabbed over, making it slip out of my grip. Tears growing. I'd drop water on it and work it out gently, apologized. She grunted a response. I could see the seam where two pieces of material were joined together. It was coming apart. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd used the tattered fabric to dry and bind the wounds. I could see the dirt. I have to clean some of this, I warned her. She grunted a response. I worked on the cuts and scrapes until it was too dark to see. I managed to clean the big cuts. I told her that it was the best I could do. There'd been very little blood. The pith from the reeds had absorbed most of it. They're going to leave scars. I'm going to make a poultice and put it on the scratches, I said. I'll use what's torn and tie it into place. You can wear my furs if you feel you must. She grunted a response. My name's Jen, by the way. As soon as I had the poultice wrapped up tight, feeling confident it wouldn't fall off while we walked, I told her we were leaving. We were going to follow the base of the foothills until we couldn't see anymore. 1,000 beats, maybe more. I didn't want to take a chance that the creatures in the clearing weren't going to climb the rocks, come after us. I wanted to put as much distance between them and us as we could. I'd be a fool to think they were going to leave us alone. 1,000 beats, maybe more, I told myself. She didn't like the idea of moving, but I think that's because the pain finally started to settle in. All the same, I told her staying where we were was inviting trouble, and I'd learned long ago it's better not to look for trouble when you're standing in the middle of it. The sun was finally starting to set with a brilliant orange when we made our climb up higher into the rocks. It was still light enough for me to see what I wanted to be higher up. I was hoping the creatures would be deterred by the idea of a climb. I thought the rocky terrain would be too much of a challenge for them, and they'd simply give up, go back to their tunnels. I was counting on it. I wasn't comfortable with the idea of staying in the rocks either. There were tribes and the Vandals that we'd encountered, and I wasn't about to think things would be different here. The last thing I wanted was a rock slide forcing us off a cliff face and burying us on the rocks below. We'd put a lot of distance between where we were and where we were now. The only thing I had to judge that distance by was the bending, twisting river disappearing across the ever-widening plains. The sun was setting behind the distant Vandals, reflecting off the river, shadows of rock lengthening, darkening, the trees a silhouette of shadows against a twilight sky. I held my hand out to her, both of us mindful of our steps, relying on each other in case one of us should trip on loose rocks, or maybe slip on a piece of loose slate underneath. It was hard work. I banged my arms and legs on rocky outcrops, my knee giving out on me when I least expected it to. The buckskin pants I was wearing did little to protect me. Finally, I saw a small copse of trees in the valley below. There was a stream trickling down the rocky face of where we were climbing, pooling into a small depression in the rocks before spilling down a short cliff face and into the stream below. This is where we want to stop for the night, I said. Why here? She said. We must have passed a dozen of these little places along the way. Why is this one so different? Well, for one thing, there's water, I said. I'm willing to concede the point, she said, smiling and settling down on the rocks, pulling her boots off. She sat back, letting the air wash over her toes as she looked at the small trees and their wide fronds. I could see she was taking in everything around us. Well, if there's water, there's going to be game as well, I said. We haven't eaten all day. We'll need to eat, or else we'll lose our strength. You don't want to be reaching for a handhold and not having the energy because you haven't eaten for 3 days. 3 days? I've gone without food for longer. It's not something I recommend, but it happens sometimes, I said. What else is there about this spot that attracts you? The overhang, the trees. I like that we can cut tree branches and lay them down and make ourselves comfortable. We can tie the tusker hide up to keep the wind out, or drop it for the rain, which is always a possibility. It'll keep us warm because we can't have a fire. In the morning, I can go out hunting and maybe find us something to eat. Then we can make a fire. You seem to have thought this out, she said, putting her boots back on. It's the difference between living and dying, I said. Out here, if you don't have the means, you'll die. The means? Food, water, weapons. I drew my sword and she jumped. Perhaps she was thinking we were about to be attacked. I don't know, but I smiled and shook my head. I'm just going to cut some branches down for us to lay on, I said. We'll use that spot over there, I added, pointing at an overhang. I said we could drape, and hold it in place. There was a dead tree trunk, and I thought we could tie one side of the hide to it, closing everything off. The space was at least 10 paces deep and about half as high. In a short time, I had the floor of the little space filled with leafy fronds. I'd cut the leaves off the larger branches, and the leaves let off a fragrant scent when I cut into them, so that soon the entire area smelled of citrus. I found 4 large-sized rocks and walked them to the overhang, struggled somewhat to get them into place, and then set about tying one side of the hide to the dead tree. It's not very warm, she said, crawling out of the space. It will take a while for our bodies to warm it up, I said, but at least we won't freeze. I was exhausted with all that had happened today, and no sooner did I lay my head down than I was sleeping. Ricky. What the fuck? I said, sitting up and looking around. It was too dark for me to see anything, but I could hear the soft, rhythmic sound of someone sleeping beside me. That has to be Jen, I told myself. I don't understand. What's going on? Who's going to explain this to me? If I'm here with her, then where's Helen? Was she lost somewhere in time? Is that what Jen meant when she said that she was lost for a bit? And if I'm in this man's body, where's mine? Am I still laying in the storage room? Am I dead? Is this what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life? Where's Jimmy? She said he was lost too, and she lost her bracelet. Now what? Is she locked into this time, or will someone come and get her? I needed answers, and I needed them now. I reached over and shook Jen awake. She stirred, rolled over, muttered something to me, and went back to sleep. Jen, I said, pushed her this time. She was awake immediately. Ricky? I could hear her. I could hear her turning head, stifling a yawn, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. I could sense her looking at me in the dark. You came back, she said. In truth, I never left, I told her. I don't know what that means, she said slowly, dropping whatever she was wearing off her shoulders. I don't believe you when you said it would get hot. I didn't believe you when you said it would get hot in here. I never said that, I said. That was the other guy. What's his name? Whit. What the hell kind of a name is that? I don't know. Maybe it's short for Whittle. Why don't you ask his dad, Zard? What is this place? I asked after a moment. Well, I'm pretty sure it isn't Kansas, but it could be. Cut the shit, Jen. I'm not in the mood for riddles. Tell me what the fuck is going on here. This is the year 2458, according to the calendar, you know. According to the calendar of this time, unknown to the people who live here. That's because in the year 2132, the supervolcano under Yellowstone erupted. That erupted lasted 3 weeks, crippling the entire continent from the Arctic to the Caribbean. The greatest natural disaster to have ever hit mankind. The entire planet ended up going into a mini ice age. But that's not the end of it. Several large dormant volcanoes erupted at the same time. By that, I mean within 8 months of each other. All that seismic activity caused the tectonic plates in the Pacific to shift. This time is about 200 or 300 years after all of that. So why am I here? I told you, the bracelet you were wearing was meant for your father's genetic code. As his son, you share that same genetic code to some degree. So it activated, thinking I was my father? Something like that. And we're here because this is where my father lived when he was here? From what I know, yes. From what you know. We were quiet for a time. I could hear the wind outside the dark enclosure whistling against the tarp covering the opening. Why are we in the mountains? The last thing I remember, we were underneath a boat. It was a raft. Wit made it out of Tusker hide. Tusker hide. What's that? An elephant. Why would there be elephants here? Remember those tectonic plates? Nothing's like it was before. Most of the wildlife you see around here is a result of all those zoos out there. Well, guess who's out there free to roam the land? Like I said, it's been 200 or 300 years, and most of them don't have many natural predators. There's a lot of hybrids out there, lions and mountain lions and tigers, buffaloes and bison and those big lizards. What big lizards? I said. I don't know what they're called. Where are they from? Well, some were here, in the Everglades, alligators. No, the ones from Africa. Some were in the oceans and swam here. Crocodiles, I said. That's it. Big, ugly things. Okay, so I've got where I am figured out, right? I mean, where I am in time, I corrected myself. Now, what about you? What about me? You're not the Jen I remembered from before. Why? See where you are now? Inside Wit's head? That's where you are? She nodded. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness, and I could see her figure in the dark. She was wearing a fur jacket she'd pulled down from her shoulders. Maybe she was thinking I couldn't see her in the darkness. So, which one's the real you? This one, or the one I knew in my past? They're both me, just different sides of the same coin. Very funny, I said. What? That's what Dad used to say. And speaking of him, where is he? He's with Helen, as far as I know. Which is where? You don't know? I'm sorry, your friend Wit never told me. You don't know anything he does? Frankly, yes, she said. Why? When I was in Jenny's mind, I was still able to communicate with my future self. I knew everything she was thinking, which wasn't a lot, by the way. I didn't like her, but I couldn't change her either. I was told not to, in fact. When did you start? 1985. Why? That's when he was put into the home. 12. Wit. I woke up in the morning feeling worn down and out of sorts. I was tired. I told myself it was from sleeping on the rocks. Even with leaves and fronds underneath me, there was just no getting comfortable. And then there were strange dreams that lasted most of the night. I couldn't remember the last time I hadn't slept on rocks since we started this adventure. There were those few nights in the Vandals when we'd come across our little forest oasis. But then, I was with Jeline then, and Jarrell, and we were sleeping in 2 tents. I couldn't believe it was less than a week since we'd started. Sorry. Less than a week since we'd started out. Oh, in that week, Jarrell was dead, and I